I have the great pleasure to invite on stage our State Secretary for Digital Agenda, Mathieu MICHEL. You don't even have to go and sit down. It will be a very short introduction. You can already come on stage. Thank you very much for that. Who's going to tell us about how the federal government and his people are looking towards ESG resilience. And you're telling me it's going to be a short speech?
Yeah, I'll try to.
So maybe we might even have time for a question if you're open to that, yeah?
That's not a problem for me.
So there we go.
So thank you, Toon, for the introduction. I'm really delighted to be with you for this 7th edition, I think, of this Digital Finance Summit. And Toon just told me that for the occasion, you've just put, how do you say that in English? A tie. So you are so beautiful like that, Toon. So it's, yeah, the Digital Finance Summit. A theme is important because of its transversality and its impact on the various sectors of society. Belgian fintechs companies raised 105 million euros in the first 8 months of 2022. New banking and financial technologies have continued to emerge in 2021, with a good handful and funds now available on the Belgian market. It's me that I like a lot. Monies, Cake, Payconic, Cover, etc. In 3 years, Belgian fintechs have become a key element in the digitization of the financial industry and the continuity of the country's economic activities. You know it, today we are at the heart of a new digital revolution. After the Web 1, after the Web 2, here comes the Web 3. Decentralized web without intermediaries, thanks to the ways of the blockchain. Blockchain induces new interactions between people, new ways of thinking as well. And with it comes also the metaverse. And the metaverse induces a new digital experience, a new user experience. And both are innovative and disruptive. Belgium cannot miss these development opportunities. Europe cannot miss these development opportunities. And it's important to make sure that the legislative framework is well adapted, and that the political environment is aware also of these opportunities. There are so much big challenges. So it's essential to understand the impact and build a favorable context. Through education, there is a lot to do about education. We need to review the model of education in Belgium to be more agile, but also to work more with the private education, which is agile, but also needs to be more recognized. The opportunities also through the new business models, like, for example, the distributed autonomous organization, but also new opportunities in the regulation, the way we recognized in law innovation. It's also a big importance to identify the new application in the blockchain. And me and my government are working on the answer with an adapted governance. We are building a working group to work on concrete proposition to take action in that matter. Working on, for example, legal framework to be strengthened and enabled to define the direction for the government in a concerted way with the stakeholders. Also action in financing the opportunity in blockchain innovations, but also in metaverse. Also to develop tools to bring more trust in the way we use the data. For instance, we are right now studying new application in the way the administration and the public services are working on blockchain. For example, on the driving license. For example, in the way we can organize the consent in the use of the data, but also to allow the validation of some education tool like the self-certification for the badging skills. And also something really important, because I've just spoken about opportunities in the blockchain. But as we speak about innovation, as we speak about the opportunities that lays in the blockchain, opportunities is always linked to responsibilities. And that's also an application on which we are working. It's the way we identify the strategy in the gatekeeping application. And so we are also working on the responsibility, because as we speak about innovation or blockchain, and especially in the fintech industry, there are also new responsibilities for the citizens. And that's why we are working on the digital identity wallet. You have heard about it. And we follow actively the EU regulation in that concern. We speak about the eIDAS regulation. Electronic identification, authentication, and trust services is an EU regulation on electronic identification and trust services for electronic transactions within the European Union. But also the NIS2 directive, which ensure a high and common level of security for EU networks and information system. The digital identity wallet is built to bring trust and responsibility in the evolution of the innovation, especially when it's about responsibility. I won't be longer. I will be in the place here for a few minutes after the speech. If you want to come to me and speak about some topics, don't hesitate. I will have to conclude to say a big thank you to everybody who is working in the fintech sector. You are really doing a wonderful job, and it's really for me something. It makes me lucky, and it makes us lucky as a government to identify all the energy which is in this sector. You can be proud of it. We are proud of what you do every day. Belgium is a small country, that's for sure. It's also a complicated country. You've also noticed that. But with a huge, huge potential. And I'm sure that our greatest strength is also our greatest weakness. It's our difference. But if we work together, and if we share the same ambition, the same passion, I'm convinced that we can make great things, and that's what you are doing every day. We are part of the same team, so let's work together, and the world will be ours for sure.
Don't leave the stage yet, because you were so well in time. That's the danger with paper, that you can cut yourself. The digital doesn't cut you, does it? Right? Yep. So you can start thinking about question. We have time for one question. And I was very lucky, because before, and when you go backstage, I got to fumble with the digital wallet app already. So it's there. I can tell you it's coming. Who wants to ask one short question? The unique opportunity to ask our politicians.
That's not a unique opportunity.
No, this has been invented here. So please don't cause a government crisis.
I will do my best. So thank you for your presentation. One question that I have is that because one of the initiatives that you mentioned is concerning digital identity and digital identification. So when I hear that, I'm wondering if your administration is trying to build a competition to It's Me, for example.
I was waiting for that question. So absolutely not. I'm really one of the big fan of It's Me. But there is an important question as we speak about identity and authentication. I think that we as government, we must ensure that in any way we can identify or authenticate a citizen's identity. That's really something important. It's Me was really a game changer about the digital gap, to facilitate access to administration, to bank services, and so on. It's Me is a tool of the private sector. Okay, it's like to say, for example, if you, I see you are hesitating, but if I have to connect myself to Taxon Web, for example, is it normal that the only way to access the Taxon on web should be some private tool? That's a question that we have to ask ourselves. And as we speak about the EIDAS regulation or the NIS2 regulation, we speak about the ability for the country to ensure this identity. And so the way we work or know with the private sector is really important. So today, how do we use It's Me? It's through a regulation which allows a private company to authentify the citizen. That's the way it functions. So if this company decides not to work with us anymore, for example, the Belgium won't be able to identify its citizen on the web services on the administration. That's, to my point of view, a risk that we cannot take. Okay? For example, if It's Me goes into failure, do we have a plan B? No, we don't have it. Oh, no, we have it. We have one. The one we have is this, I don't know how to say it. Yeah, the card ID reader, which is from the past. And that was something completely under control of the federal state. Okay? And so what we are trying to identify is to say, okay, It's Me is wonderful, but we must evolve that card reader. And if we work on the digital identity wallet, we will take your ID and we will digitize this ID. And so what we are trying to do, what we are doing, in fact, is to digitalize the card reader, but only for administration purpose. Okay? So that's what we are trying to do. And by doing so, we are answering the open regulation. That's what we are doing. But thank you for the question. It was important to speak about. And if someone wants to come to me in a few minutes to ask more questions about It's Me, and I must repeat, I love It's Me.
So I think we should also, first of all, big thank you for this answer. This was not scripted, so extra applause for that. We can see that the federal government is also a shareholder to FPIM of It's Me, so their branding was definitely well covered by the State Secretary. And I think many thanks for the person asking the question on behalf of Deutsche Bank. Many of people in the room, I think, had the same question. We can discuss this further on. And so without further ado, I'm going to invite Henri DEWAERHEIJD from Mastercard on stage. We have a slide for you. We have a jingle normally, but because we're improvising, we're just going to go for it. Throw you in front of the audience. Henri, you've been with us for a while, and well, we thank you for being back with us and tell us more about ESG and what Mastercard is.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. This is definitely my favorite summit of the year because that's where the most creative and the most innovative minds of Belgium are, so it's a real privilege to be here in front of you and to talk to you about ESG. ESG is not a three-letter word, it's an acronym that stands for environmental, social, and governance. It was first used in 2005, already 17 years ago, and still then it's been on a steep rise. Today, more than 90% of the Standard & Poor's companies have in some way or form an ESG report. And if you look at investments, all of you know that ESG investments have been on the rise. And since the midway of this year, they represented about $2.5 trillion with a T. So you can see that it's been something that's been front and center very much. But is ESG really important for companies? What is the business ground, the strategic rationale for ESG? And there's been a lot of critics of ESG when you approach it from a business angle. A critic of ESG has been that it gets in the way of some of the substance of what a company really is and what a business is supposed to do. If you take it back to Milton Friedman, a famous economist, mostly in the 80s, he phrases it as such: a company is there to make as much money as possible while conforming with the basic rules of society. And the important word here is basic. So viewed from this perspective, ESG can be presented as something of a sideshow, something of a PR gig. And very often critics have branded ESG as greenwashing, purpose washing, or even woke washing. However, what we do see in reality is that many companies today are making major decisions that do not make sense necessarily in the short term or do not make sense necessarily financially. An example of that has been the discontinuation of operations in Russia before companies were actually forced to do it from a sanctions perspective. All of these companies, major brands, have wiped out hundreds of millions of dollars from their P&L. For what? It seems that they did it because it was the right thing to do. And the fundamental issue with ESG critiques is a failure to take into account what McKinsey calls the social license. And the social license is a perception by stakeholders that a business and an industry is acting in a way that is fair, appropriate, and deserving of trust. What ESG critics overlook is that a precondition for sustaining long-term value in a business is to manage and address massive paradigm-shifting externalities. Let's talk a little bit about those externalities. Indeed, companies today cannot really ignore them anymore. What happens when a snowless winter, for example, impacts geothermal electricity production or even maritime transport on the Rhine? Can you truly ignore that severe droughts and severe repetitive droughts are forcing our farmers to completely review what they are having as crops? They have to change what they do from what their parents did, from what their grandparents did, and what has been done ancestrally. Things are going very fast. Also, are we not living in a different world that is now post-#MeToo and post-grassroots organizations like Black Lives Matter? Managers can miss the very point of why they are there in the first place, and that is to ensure that their business endures, but that their business endures with societal support in a sustainable and environmentally viable way. The social license is an oxygen for companies. It's impossible to survive without it, and companies can just not wait for things to get better. Instead, they really need to go ahead, look at the future issues and events, build purpose into their own business models, and demonstrate they benefit multiple stakeholders, not just the shareholders, multiple stakeholders, and a broader public. At Mastercard, we believe businesses can indeed play a pivotal role in driving real change. That impact can be assessed internally and externally. When I think about it at Mastercard, internally, we're looking at our operations. We're trying to reduce our corporate environmental impact, for example, being net zero by 2040. But what is a lot more interesting, my friends, is to really think about externalities, leveraging our unique position and the network effects created by the partnerships that we have as a company. Indeed, Mastercard partners with thousands of financial institutions and millions of merchants around the globe. Leveraging those partnerships, we have set ourselves 3 goals. The first one is to restore 100 million trees by 2025. The second one is to support 50 million businesses globally. And the last one is to bring 1 billion unbanked people into the digital economy by 2025. Because we truly believe that partnerships make a difference. Partnerships is truly in the DNA of Mastercard. Why? Because we are a B2B2C company. And what that really means is that we honestly cannot do anything without a financial institution issuing a card and a merchant on the other side accepting our brand. We are by default a partnership model. And we want to use this partnership model to also leverage it to achieve the ESG goals that I've been talking about. At Mastercard, we don't believe that we have the monopoly of good ideas, quite to the contrary. We actually believe that there are many smart minds in each country, in each market, in each community that have great business ideas, but also have a purpose for their company. And that is true in this market as well, in Belgium, which actually bubbles with entrepreneurs and with people that really want to make a difference. Let's look at some examples. Let's start with Jelle BAATS. Jelle BAATS is the CEO of Bonsai. And what he does, he is essentially creating a payments app. And with this payments app is very much geared against offsetting environmental impacts. And with each transaction that you do, Jelle actually commits to help for restoration of forests. In this case, he's working together with the Eden Reforestation, sorry, it's difficult to say, project in Madagascar. And every time you make a payment with his app, he actually contributes, and his company recently announced that they've already planted 100,000 trees. I think it's a wonderful example of a partnership and how that leads us to actually bring us to meeting our ESG goals. Another example that I love very much is Moneytrans. At the head of Moneytrans is Jeremy de Smet. His office is about 3 kilometers away near the Avenue Louise. And Jeremy decided to extend his current business. His business is around remittances for foreign workers, essentially enabling foreign workers that work here in Belgium or in other countries in Europe to send money home, which is obviously hugely important. He's extending his business line, giving an IBAN account and a card to these foreign workers, trying to get hundreds of thousands of people into the digital economy and away from cash. At a time when access to a bank account is getting more and more complicated, think of de-risking, this is really making a difference at a very individual level. Another example that I like very much is the one from Skipper. Aurélie Gilliot is heading Skipper, and she's obsessed with travel. She's obsessed with business travel, and she's trying to get employees from A to B in the smartest way. Now, contrary to a Belgian habit, that's not a company car. What she's actually doing is she has an app, and this app is giving you the smartest way to move from A to B, minimizing your CO2 impact. This is another great example of how collaboration and thinking through these creative ideas gets us to real results. And the final example I want to leave you with is the example of Easy Shops. Easy Shops, at the head of Easy Shops, Sophie Geroms, she came to us with really a will to drive the growth of Belgian starters in the e-commerce and really getting them to get their first euro online in revenue. And you know that Belgium is a little bit falling behind compared to other countries when it comes to e-commerce, so we really liked her story. So together we've set up this platform called Easy Shop, and Easy Shop is two things. It is a free web shop for a starter, but not only that, it's additionally individualized coaching to help this starter really get revenue as quickly as possible. And the two together are really driven to get more and more people that have an idea, that have something that they want to sell, and to get them online in Belgium. So, in conclusion, a couple of things. ESG is something that I believe is absolutely critical. We believe that it's really needed for any company to think about and to embed it, because it's what's going to drive the long-term sustainability, not only of the company, but of the environment in general. And we recognize at Mastercard that we have a social license, a responsibility to a participation in society overall. The biggest difference that we can make is through partnerships. Our model is leveraging the entrepreneurial spirit that exists in this room. So if you have a good idea and you think that we might help, please come and see us, come and talk to us, because who knows, one step at a time, we might make the world better. With that closing, I want to really thank you for your attention. Thank you for being here, and I hope to speak to you in the break.
Get the bottle. Yeah. So thank you very much. People, so Henri, big thanks for this one.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the agenda and the people in the back and Alessandra, because I was asked and Xavier to make announcements. Xavier, if you can tell me, you want to make me announcements on the other things now or after the panel?
You can announce.
You can announce now? Okay, so you're off. Thank you very much, Henri. So there is a slide and a jingle somewhere out there that we skipped earlier on, which is to prepare you all for what's coming next after the panel. To make sure that you choose, of course, we love to keep you here, but there's, as you know, interesting stuff going on in many other spaces in the building. And so there is a slide deck that was scheduled for the beginning of this session, which is actually directing people who are already self-helping themselves by what's on their agenda on the necklace. And Alessandra is going to come and help you with that one. So I can instruct you to the right news, because I did not memorize which session is on which stage. But I see by the people leaving that you don't need much guidance, which is awesome. Thank you for that. And while I try to improvise and get the right slides, you can put them on there for me. I only have the clicker. So just to make sure, I do know we have a very interesting panel that's about to happen here. So for the people that remain seated, you'll have a really, really great panel that's going to happen here. The next session will start here about ESG. We have the pitch battle for scale-ups that is about to start. For those who attended earlier on, there's a jury, they're pitching, it's full of energy over there too. We have a roundtable happening on open data, and we have the roundtable on security. So don't feel sorry if you leave the room. We know you're going to another worthy cause and speakers that will be happy to see you in their rooms. So I will give it a few more minutes to allow everybody to go to those other rooms and to align the program. We're right on schedule at 2:30, so they're happy to see that we made that one despite the questions. And I'm sort of judging by the people who are still in the room that you have decided that ESG is your acronym about which you want to learn more. I'm going to ask Alessandra if there's any more slides. I see that she's negotiating with the technicians to see which slides and jingles should come back. And if not, I will already invite the panel on stage so that they can get a seat. I can get you drinks. I see that Xavier is preparing that too. If we can already prepare the drinks for the panel that's about to happen here. There is the panel. There's a mix-up, sorry. I need to look at my papers. Ah, yes, the next keynotes, fantastic. And I have to wait till 30, so I'm sort of filling the time one more minute to make sure that online, I don't even need to, but I will try to make it up to everybody, because this looks improvised and it actually is. So next up is not a panel, we first have 3 more keynotes. We'll have Nasir ZUBAIRI this is the CEO of LHoFT, coming in from Luxembourg. He asked me earlier on how much time he's getting. You're getting 10 minutes. I know you're going to be able to say everything you want to bring in those 10 minutes. And if Alessandra gives me the green light, then I can already invite Nasir on stage.
There are people online, and the session will start at 12.
So that's why we're so strict. So the online audience has priority over this improvisation that I'm doing here, because they can only click on the session at the exact time at 30, which is now. So assuming that we have the right atomic clock and Central European time is everybody's zone, we can invite Nasir on stage. Let's get a little bit of applause. Oh, there's a jingle. I am really, really, really. Nasir ZUBAIRI, CEO of LHoFT. Please be welcome. I'm not going to introduce you a 4th time. Welcome. I'm going to give you the clicker, though. You might need it. I don't know if you're going to use it, but here it is.
Oh, this works anyway. I fortunately managed to match my jacket to my picture today. I forgot about that. So I'm going to talk about ESG a little bit, and I must confess I'm a complete dilettante in this subject. It's not a speciality of mine. We hear the term mentioned, profusely across all sectors of financial services in general and across the world as a whole. And obviously, there's something we need to do. We're all focused on ensuring the longevity of this planet, ensuring the sustainability for future generations. But there's a key element in terms of what financial services and arguably fintech can do in order to help enable this. And what we did was we wanted to find out a little bit more. So we partnered up with Deloitte to run a qualitative study. So there's no data and statistics in this. It's more opinion and thoughts and insights from the finance sector in Luxembourg as to where ESG stands today and what potentially needs to be done going forward and how fintechs can help. So ever since the EU Action Plan, finance has become increasingly sort of involved in that arena of sustainable finance moving forward, and sustainable finance has become a strategic pillar within Luxembourg's finance sector. It's what the Ministry of Finance is critically focused on alongside digitalization. And obviously within that world, it comes all of the new regulations that have already come to force and are going to be coming to force over the course of the coming years. And with regulation comes data and reporting. But there's still, I think to some degree, as the previous speaker indicated, there's still a little bit of confusion around ESG. Is it something people really want? Going back to Milton Friedman's quote that you made, my fundamental issue or hypothesis is still that the people that really move the markets, the people that have all the money to invest, the ultra high net worths, the high net worths as they're called, that are the guys putting trillions into funds and investment products, I still wonder if they actually give a damn, because they care about making money, a bit like the basic principles of business. But we wanted to see where the fund sector that is supplying these products to these individuals, what its stance was around ESG, how they see the strategy for Luxembourg's financial services moving forward. And we wanted to understand what are the core challenges and opportunities within this area and how fintechs can fit into this puzzle. So this report, we've been doing the interviews with Deloitte over the past 6 months or so. We're in the process of finishing the draft, and it will be available in December 2022. I'll be honest, Deloitte very kindly did all of these slides for me. It's not my usual style. There are a hell of a lot of words, but you can expect that from a consulting firm, right? They don't get the thing about pictures, do they, at all? Right, but it's very nice of them to do it for me. So why did we do this? Luxembourg is next door to Belgium. I hope some of you know about Luxembourg. It's a small country. You might accidentally drive through it on the way to Germany sometimes, or to France. Luxembourg is now arguably the biggest financial services sector in the EU in terms of cross-border flows. If you're to resize the world map by money flows going across borders, Luxembourg is the 3rd largest country after the UK and the US. It controls nearly 6 trillion in assets under management and has about 8 trillion of assets in custody. We have the largest insurance sector in the European Union. But within all of the context of the fund management and investment management center, as I said, sustainable finance has become a core priority. The Luxembourg Stock Exchange has created the Green Exchange, which is the #1 listings venue in the world for green bonds. We control about 22% market share in ESG funds. And we are also, and sometimes this is forgotten, the societal aspect of ESG, the #1 destination for microfinance funds. So we went out to try and get a broad sector of representation from from the industry to get their insights. And there you see some of the statistics. Yes, most of the discussions were with fintechs, but we talked to a number of financial institutions and the key associations that represent those institutions, as well as government and some researchers. So as I said, the report is in the process of being finalized, but I just wanted to share a few of the insights. Yes, sustainability is a priority. Duh. I mean, that's quite obvious. But the institutions are working very hard because they do feel that this is becoming fundamental to their culture in terms of developing and delivering sustainable finance products to the market. There are some challenges and issues, particularly around greenwashing, that still exist, but these are things that are being tackled going forward to ensure that we do really focus on the key elements of sustainability and sustainable finance. Around that, Luxembourg has created quite a rich ecosystem of associations and initiatives to help spur that movement along. There is us, the LHoFT, and we do place emphasis around sustainable finance. But then there's the Luxembourg Sustainable Finance Initiative, there's the official strategy that's been communicated, the International Climate Finance Accelerator, the Luxembourg Stock Exchange, and a whole host of actors that are really helping to create a broad foundation for the sustainable finance arena. We as the LHoFT for the past 5 years have been running a financial inclusion bootcamp for firms that focus on improving inclusion within Africa. This year, our bootcamp will run at the end of October. We had over 400 applications from some incredible fintech firms in Africa, and we were only able to select 15. But the growth in that bootcamp and the impact it seems to be creating has been a source of great pride to us and to the Luxembourg government as well. As a whole, the fintech sector around ESG has also been growing, be it that a lot of the focus or the practical application within that world has mostly been on the G side, given the nature of Luxembourg's financial services sector. RegTech blossoms in Luxembourg. We probably have one of the highest density of firms that focus on RegTech, compliance reporting, etc. But within that, we are now seeing the requirements being met for ESG, given that you have new regulations like SFDR that have come into place. So this has become part and parcel of the governance side of things. Where we see a lot of focus, and we did do some benchmarking comparison internationally, where we see a lot of focus for ESG, I think, is a lot on the climate and the E side of things as well, about being green. That's still a very nascent sector developing in Luxembourg. We have, in a similar way to Bonsai, slightly different structure. We have funds that are focusing on renewable tree investments and other areas of green finance. And societal, again, we have a lot of fintech firms that are focusing on financial inclusion, particularly in Africa and further afield. And that sector continues to grow. And there's more and more firms that are providing a focus on this area over time. Without any question, what came up in the study from everyone we interviewed was that data is the biggest issue. With new regulations like SFDR and other regulations that are coming into place, there's a lot of focus on qualitative information. And being able to source that qualitative information effectively and consistently is giving a lot of financial institutions a headache, but that in itself presents a wonderful opportunity for fintech firms to be able to assist them in the management, collection, analysis, and quality assurance of that data, to be able to help them with those reporting requirements. And without any doubt at all, is probably the biggest area of opportunity for fintech firms. In ESG. Now, alongside that, what we identified, and it was interesting to hear this from financial institutions, was that they feel that startups that are, in general, very focused on particular niches. So a fintech firm that would focus on ESG will have built up a repository of knowledge and talent that could be useful to the finance sector in terms of providing advice and guidance. There's a Belgian firm that we work also very closely with called Greenamy that have found that they spent a lot of time actually providing advisory services to financial institutions alongside their application, which is related to reporting on the EU taxonomy for institutions. But they were helping the institutions develop their strategy around ESG internally. And a lot of institutions felt this is worthwhile and that the talent that sustainable finance fintech firms acquire could be very useful to them to help them build and ensure that they're creating the right frameworks going forward. You can read the rest. I'm not going to bother. Deloitte obviously loves words on slides. Magic? No? No, it's not working. Anyway, my time's up. But basically, the last two slides were just talking a little bit more about some of the practical actions. And I think one of the key things is that ESG has to be inbuilt and ingrained in the culture of institutions as well. It's all well and good us looking to provide ESG funds, ESG products, ESG fintech, but we need to live and breathe ESG within the development of our own organization and, you know, around the culture that we instill within the people. And I think that's critical. It has to become a core pillar of the culture of any institution going forward, including financial institutions, including fintech firms, in order for us to consistently look towards driving a sustainable future. Thank you very much. Belgian wine. Okay, thank you.
And I'm now completely confused if you want to keep doing the jingles or if I keep going. So if there's a jingle, let's have it now. Let's give it 3 seconds, but there's no jingle, so I'm going to go on with the next speaker from Microsoft. It's Margaret SPLAWN, who will explain from her role as a sustainability industry expert how Microsoft is looking towards ESG. So, and Margaret, we look forward to what you're going to tell us.
Well, bonjour Bruxelles. It is wonderful to be here. Today I am going to dig into the importance of what the last speaker talked about, which is accurate, reliable, and transparent ESG data, why it matters. Now, I'm Margaret SPLAWN, as I mentioned. I'm a worldwide sustainability industry advocate at Microsoft, which means that I work with public and private sector customers on technology-driven solutions to amplify progress and transform businesses through environmental, social, and governance capabilities. I also serve as a public and private partnership advisor to our $1 billion Climate Innovation Fund. Working in sustainable finance over the past 10 years means that I've had a front row seat to see the explosion of what's happened in ESG investing. And this session will address how to accelerate your ESG journey by unifying data intelligence with the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. Let's see if this works. Oh, it does. Perfect. Great. So Microsoft is not new to the subject of sustainability. For more than a decade, we have steadily built on our commitment to innovation and investment in technologies to address environmental sustainability. Now, we've landed important work ever since we set our first carbon reduction goal back in 2009, and we focused our attention where we believe we can have the most impact, and that is in the areas of carbon, water, waste, and ecosystems. In 2020, we set new commitments to go beyond to a real net zero target and committed to become a carbon negative, water positive, zero waste company by 2030 that protects more land than it uses. From 2030 to 2050, we will continue not just zeroing out our annual emissions, but we're going to go back in time and remove all the emissions we're associated with since we were founded in 1975. Now, as we set these ambitious goals and establish our roadmaps, we turned again and again to our deep experience and expertise in sustainability and software-driven innovation for data-driven approaches. We recognized that to succeed, we really needed to embed sustainability into our culture. Now, we're ready to work closely with our partners and customers to advance our collective efforts, because we've discovered that for organizations of all kind, no matter which industry, the overarching sustainability journey is similar. It's been our own experience, and we experience that with our customers too. Because ESG is really a data and materiality problem, especially in financial markets. And ESG intersects with all stakeholders, including customers, communities, and employees. The previous speaker from Mastercard mentioned the growth and talked about various numbers. We all know the incredible amount of growth that's coming, but with the explosion of this, companies are looking for ways to best position themselves, and data and digitalization is one of the most impactful ways that companies can do so. Because that when you consider these three pillars across ESG, there is a mix of qualitative and quantitative data to assess, and it can get pretty messy when you try to get all of this. Still, companies are gathering and reporting mountains of data. This is where materiality matters, because where and how is the environment material to a company's operations? And on the other side is, how does the company impact the environment? This double materiality is the intersection of ESG with a financial impact. Now, our cloud offering is a big part of our business of sustainability. We're empowering our suppliers, our customers, and our partners with sustainability and ESG goals. But the foundation, what I'd like to share about is the foundation is the Microsoft Cloud, which is really sustainable by default. It's much more efficient than any on-premises offering of up to 90% less carbon intensive than on-premise offerings. This is our core on the left-hand side, our core offering of Azure, Dynamics 365 and Microsoft 365. And we call it sustainability by default because that's exactly what you get when you purchase these products. Now, building on top of that are the foundations of a horizontal sustainability solutions. And we call this sustainability by desire, because the centerpiece is the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, which will currently focus on an environmental accounting called the Microsoft Sustainability Manager in just a minute. But this pillar also includes the Azure Emissions Impact Dashboard, which measures your cloud emissions. We've also built a planetary computer for measuring the health of the world's ecosystems and providing planetary insights. Now, we recognize that these horizontal solutions may fall short for some of our customers, and some need to go vertical within vertical industries. And then we go to specific industry solutions and sustainability by design, where we work directly with our customers on solving these. Now, the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability is the first of our horizontal clouds, and it's built on Microsoft Azure, which is the world's most trusted cloud. And it joins all the rest of the clouds to give you an end-to-end integration. So what's interesting about, and I'm so excited about the Cloud for Sustainability, is that it's completely extendable on both sides, which means that by our growing partner ecosystem, which means that partners are providing data connectors to enrich opportunities for organizations on the front end, and rich and robust digital solutions to further support reduction initiatives on the back end with additional analytics, digital twins, and AI-driven automation. Because, as I mentioned, the sustainability journey is practically, for every organization begins with the same thing. Knowing where you are today, setting future goals, and making data-driven decisions about the best steps to achieve these goals. With comprehensive end-to-end digital solutions, we are helping organizations record their environmental footprint, report their progress internally and externally, and reduce their emissions with business intelligence from previous steps and new solutions. We're using this data to drive insights, results, and transformation. Now, I'm going to touch briefly around this Microsoft Sustainability Manager because it is a software as a service solution, and it was built by us to help us achieve our own goals and to help organizations create momentum in their progress to net zero, no matter where you're starting. And what it does is it breaks down these data silos, which we've heard a lot about today from the previous speakers, and it enables near real-time visibility into the emissions activities of your entire enterprise and value chain. It streamlines reporting and provides the insights required to continuously test, refine, and scale your sustainability initiatives, and it enables more effective actions by connecting to first-party and third-party solutions focused on carbon reduction, replacement and removal, and integrating the flow of data. What Microsoft Sustainability Manager is designed to do is easy to connect the systems and processes you need to go from neutral to net zero, because really the work to measure carbon is not the end goal. It is the foundation for effective carbon emissions strategies and transformation. And what does this look like in practicality? I'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour of this. Here's how Microsoft Sustainability Manager streamlines data integration to help you move faster. First, you'll link your emission sources in the Data Connections tab. Now, these connectors will draw data from facilities and utilities, utility companies across the world. This only needs to be connected once, and then the data will automatically refresh at selected intervals. Then the emissions calculations formula accounts for the emissions impact in the raw data connectors, which means that if you're pulling in data from utilities that are generated through renewable energy sources, it factors that. It also factors the emission standards of different geographies. Then, using the common data model, the Microsoft Sustainability Manager, for all of your emissions, you can bring all this siloed data, which often sits in disparate, varied spreadsheets across companies in various different departments, together into a single picture that IT, business operations, and sustainability stakeholders can share in order to see a holistic view of where the company is. Now, with all the factors accounted for, your organization can track total emissions across locations, as well as each location's progress via near real-time data visualization. What's interesting is you can also drill down into the emission scopes, the sources, and the geography, so that you could see where the performance of a business operation is, and what might be the contributing factors for a decline or an increase. What's great about this, and it's designed specifically like all Microsoft products, is it's designed to present the data to stakeholders in an easy, digestible format. The data tells the story of where you are today and gives leaders the insight they need to decide on next steps. You can use the solution to create reports that meet public reporting requirements and show regulators and customers how you're doing your sustainability commitments. You can set goals and review progress with an MSM scorecard. Over time and with engagement from leadership, you can assign tasks, you can make investments, and continue to track progress. You can identify milestones as well that might be at risk and address these. Really, in conclusion, data provides the proof of your story. It helps you separate the your real impacts on ESG as opposed to ESG washing. And this solution was designed for us, and now we're helping and sharing other companies and customers and partners building on this. As I mentioned, data creation, this feeds back into the systems-based approach. This feedback loop means that you're continuously learning, so we're not only, and then with this human interaction, you're not only recording and reporting, but you are improving your ESG stance. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak with you here today.
And Margaret, big thanks for that talk. I'm going to take the clicker from you, give you the bottle, and warn you for the steps on the side. Thank you very, very much. Our next speaker, I'll let you guess what he looks like, and then you can see that something has happened during Corona in the last few years. You can't tell the bankers apart from the fintech entrepreneurs anymore, right? He's worked at KBC, Mathieu NEIRINCK, for 11 years.
Exactly.
You're the sustainability manager there, and we're going from the global view to the banking view on how to manage this.
Yes, so in 10 minutes. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today. In 10 minutes, I'm going to take you towards sustainability at KBC, towards green, the new digital. It's a quote of our group CEO, Johan Thijs, that he made in the sustainability report of 2019, by which he referred of all the scale and the efforts that we have been doing so far in the digital evolution, the digital revolution. In fact, there's a new evolution coming. It's the green one, so get ready for it. Starting from the top, the great acceleration, we have been a tremendous boost in welfare, comfort, economic growth since the Industrial Revolution, but we all know, I'm not going to stand still too long at this slide, that it has been at the cost of breaking the planetary boundaries. We have to act, multiple organizations, IPCC and so on, that each year say again, we have to act quickly and more quickly. The good thing is the political world is taking action, knows that they have to act, and Europe is taking the lead. With its EU Green Deal, the ambition of Europe to be climate neutral by 2050, the Fit for 55 program and 55% less carbon emissions by 2030, and the EU taxonomy, it's a sort of the green Bible in Europe. 6 chapters, 2 of already approved, 4 in draft version, that calls each specific asset or activity green or not green. So we have a Bible so that we can say, okay, this is a sustainable project because it's aligned with the EU taxonomy. Europe has high ambitions and it's looking very much at the financial industry to help in achieving its ambitions, to play an absolute lever in that perspective. From 3 perspectives, first, sustainable growth. The European banking industry is responsible for 70% of all of the investments that European companies are doing. So if these banks could divert and direct their credit policies from the classical gray towards the more green or more sustainable, remember EU taxonomy, then of course they are a huge lever in the realization of a more sustainable world, a more sustainable Europe. Second, from a climate risk perspective, thinking about the floods in the Walloon region last year, the drought this summer, there's a direct impact of climate risk on the P&L of banks, on the P&L of insurers, so they have to get ready for it. It's also the ECB that states that with the ECB stress test, ECB thematic review. More and more banks need to be aware, and insurers, that there's climate risk and that their risk framework needs to be adapted for this. So if they can divert into sustainable growth and they have a risk at stake, then Europe states we need them into the game, and to be sure that they are in the game, we're going to increase the number of reportings from a sustainability perspective. ECB, EIOPA for insurance, EBA, and so on and so on. More and more reportings on that end. A lot that needs to be done. KBC, more or less a pioneer also in sustainability. How did we tackle it? In 2019, we've signed the United Nations Collective Commitment to Climate Action. It's a commitment that KBC will do whatever it takes to keep the temperature increase globally below the 2 degrees, if possible below 1.5 degrees. But of course, that's a big commitment. And what is everything it takes if you want to do everything it takes? A lot. And that's why we changed our governance, or we adapted our governance next to a group executive committee. We've installed 2.5 years ago an internal sustainability board at KBC group level. It's chaired by Johan Thijs, our group CEO, and this board actually sets the pace, continues the direction in which all the entities, Belgium, but also the Central European countries, need to move and evolve. In each country, we have a sustainability program. In Belgium, I'm the manager for the sustainability program. Has 4 tracks, one on data. The use and the importance of sustainability data has already been touched upon by the previous keynote speakers. One on products. How can we adapt our products, both from a credit as an insurance perspective, in order to play that role as a lever? Third one is engage. How do we get first our employees, but also our customers, private individuals and company customers, into the sustainability game? And of course, it's an innovation layer, a lateral one, because we cannot only stick to the solutions of today. There's a huge challenge that needs to be tackled, so we also will need new financial solutions to tackle that. 60 FTEs in the program, spread across all entities. That's an important one. It's not a central team that steers everything. We really want sustainability to be embedded in each process, in each product. So it's each process manager, each product manager that needs to know what sustainability is all about and how it can be embedded in its products or services. We have a triple climate strategy. The first is walk the talk. We believe that we cannot express the sustainability ambitions towards our customers if we're not acting on sustainability ourselves. Second is the towards green finance, adapting our processes and products in order to be that lever. Third, partner in transition, and I'm going to go through each of the pillars of that strategy in the coming slides. First, walk the talk, with reference to previous presentations, KBC took the ambition to have a reduction in carbon footprint by 80% by 2030, respective to 2015. And of course, a bit helped by COVID the last years and working from home, we're already at minus 71%. But of course, it's not only due to working from home by COVID. We did a lot of investments in e-mobility policies, in renewable energy, in the more sustainable petroleum, and so on. What's left in scope 1 and 2, we also offset via buying carbon credits on the voluntary market. Second step is that KBC actually published last week, and tomorrow there will be a press announce as well, launched its climate report. We looked or dived into our credit book, our loan book, took the most climate intense sectors and had a deep dive in what's the climate impact of all credits that KBC is financing in these most climate intensive sectors, amongst other real estate, mobility, and so on. We calculated what was the baseline carbon emission, and then we will publish targets onto how do we see that climate emission or climate intensity evolving from baseline 2021 up to 2030 and 2050, in line with what needs to be done scientifically in order to reach our collective commitment to climate commitment. It starts with targets. That's a guiding compass for our credit portfolio. But of course, with these targets, then you also need to make sure that your portfolio becomes greener, becomes more sustainable, and actually can meet these targets. So it's about product policy. It's about adapting what you will keep on financing. And each year, KBC is getting a little bit more stringent. If we look at the energy portfolio, for example, we do not finance coal anymore. We stopped financing new explorations of oil and gas fields, and each year we're going a little bit more into the stringent area. Product pricing is the third part. That's about the second product policy was about what won't we finance anymore. Product pricing is how can we get our portfolios more green towards the future? How can we be more incentivizing for industries, companies, and private individuals that want to invest into their journey towards more sustainability? So it's giving rate discounts for people that want to buy electric cars compared to a normal ICE combustion engine. Product innovation, as stated there, we're not going to, it's a huge challenge that needs to be tackled. It's not only the products of today, we're also looking into more circular economy solutions, to name one. That's the second pillar. Third pillar, partner in transition. We've made a market study at the beginning of last year with our both private individual companies as company, private individual customers and company customers, and both of them stated that we definitely want to be in the climate game, we want to move, but the problem is that we do not actually know what to do, what comes after step 1. So we need a guide that already knows us and that actually takes us with him or her in that sustainability journey that is not there from 0 to 1 in one step. It's going to take quite a long time. And they looked at KBC because if you look at trusted partners, you already trust a lot of information to your bank. We know our customers. So as of that point in time, we embedded it in the strategy, and we really want to be a partner end-to-end. So not only in the bank insurance perspective, but coming from measurement to insights, advice, implementation, and actual bank insurance. Some parts of that journey we do alone. In company setting, we already had more than 1,750 awareness meetings with commercial groups. Talk about sustainability. Are you ready? Do you have a climate strategy? What if, like in times of today, energy prices surge? Do you have a backup plan? And so on. We help with the own created carbon footprint calculator, not as sophisticated and qualitative as the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, but it's a first step. That's what we do ourselves, and then we have partnerships, strategic partnerships with, amongst other, Encon for corporate banking customers, Traject if you our customers want to focus on the mobility end. From a private individual perspective, we also look at solutions within housing, mobility, and energy. One example that has been communicated the past some weeks ago was our investment in Settle. Settle actually takes you from an EPC label F to EPC label B. What do you need to do to go from F to B, and what is the actual investment cost at current market prices to get there? Triple strategy, last slide, embedding sustainability. I've been a sustainability program manager for 2 years now. What have I learned? If you want to embed it in your company, it starts from the top. If top management is not involved, then this won't fly. Second, make it live throughout the organization. We have a sustainability department at group level, but again, the 60 FTEs are spread across the organization in all entities, and that's the only way. You have to combine top-down with bottom-up to make it live. 3, sustainability is innovation. That means do not only consider it as something to comply with, see it as an opportunity. Europe is taking the lead, swinging in the dance. This is an opportunity for global expansion and export. And 4, communicate about what you're doing. Each first step, second step is a step in the good direction. So communicate, but I didn't mention the word greenwashing. Now I'm doing it. Take care of the EU taxonomy and the greenwashing risk that is there. That's my cup of tea.
That's your cue for applause. So
Thank you.
when it comes to walk the talk, I really like the fact that we see a lot of things are happening. It's no longer just strategy and stuff. So I think there's a lot of inspirations for other companies in the room to follow up on that. And we have a panel coming up now, and I will not do all the introductions. That will be done by Bernard NICOLAY. He's the head of the academic director of the Solvay and professor at Solvay Business School. He has many other titles, but we'll stick to those. And he will introduce his speakers for the people on the audio tabs. 2 of them are wearing. You can already come.
Huh?
Yes.
The panelists.
You're
Thank
inviting them. On go ahead. I will take care of some drinks for all of you, and I will bring the mic. They get the microphone when they get on here. Good.
Please take a comfortable seat. 2, 2, and 1.
There you go.
All right, good afternoon. Why does sustainability matter? What are the sustainability challenges for corporates, for startups, scale-ups, SMEs? Can finance and financial market players contribute to a better world? Well, welcome to our panel on sustainability and ESG and how or to what extent they matter. You in the audience might think or even realize that you are in the wrong room because there are lots of activities going on here. If this is the case, well, I recommend you to stay because the topic is quite interesting and the panel is really great. And there is probably no better way to get inspiration and connection than by being here. So let's start. In a nutshell, my name is indeed Bernard NICOLAY. I'm passionate about education and finance, and I do not know exactly in which order. This is why I lecture at Solvay Brussels School, and I'm also an academic director there. I also lecture in Paris at Paris Dauphine and at Conservatoire National des Arts et Métiers. I've been doing that 50% of my time only from 5 years, because before, 25 years plus, I was a senior executive in banking and insurance before. And so what I've decided to do 5 years ago is to focus on my 2 other passions, who are education on the one hand, and investing in startups and scale-ups and advising management teams as well. But that's me in a nutshell. I've asked to my 2 adult children, what should I say about myself? And then they say to me, just tell them you are the Gen X with orange socks. So, okay, I'm saying that to you as well. So, but what's important, it's not me, it's our panel. It's my pleasure to introduce the panel to you in alphabetical order. First, Jelle BAATS. Jelle, you are CEO of Bonsai. You joined the company 4 years ago, and Bonsai is the payment app that plants trees, right? You joined the company 4 years ago, and as young professional, Jelle, you want to make a positive impact on people, the planet, by using your strategic and commercial skills. That's what you want to do. Then Myriam BROEDERS, you are the Chief Technology Officer and Sustainability Lead at Microsoft Belux. You are passionate about tech to create possibilities and new outcomes. You guide teams and organizations on their transformation journeys, and you can capitalize on many years, 25 plus years in tech and business. You started in a fintech, you were at IBM, at SD Works, and then you joined Microsoft. That's you. Gabriel LEVIE, you are a co-founder responsible for sales and partnerships at Wequity, almost 3 years. The company is at pre-stage. That might be of interest to Nasir as well. You provide access to artificial intelligence-powered external ESG insights at the tip of one's fingers, and you automate ESG reporting. You will be able to say more about it in a couple of minutes. You got a great education at Oxford, if I'm not mistaken, and then UC Louvain. And you had the opportunity to intern at Google and McKinsey, and it's very interesting to realize that you decided not to join those excellent companies. Okay? Michal PAPROCKI from Euroclear, you are the Group CIO, Chief Information Officer at Euroclear. You joined 4 years ago after more than 16 years at ING. You are a C-level IT executive passionate about business transformation, I would say that. And your leadership purpose is to become Master Yoda by generating constant flow of positive energy. So for this panel, Michal, for the panelists and for all of you in the audience, may the force be with you. Nasir ZUBAIRI, you are the CEO of the LHoFT. You had the opportunity to introduce yourself before. We know each other very well, but I do not know how to start with you. You are there 6 years in Luxembourg. You are a British national with 15 plus years experience in financial markets and services. If I'm not mistaken, you received an important distinction from the royal family of Luxembourg very recently, as you were awarded the Officier de l'Ordre du Mérite du Grand-Duché de Luxembourg for your services to the Luxembourg community. Congratulations for this, indeed. So, relating to sustainability now, and I'm going to avoid cold calls. So we are going to start with Jelle BAATS. Sustainability, ESG, what does it mean for you personally? And how does it translate in your business activity, please?
All right, so hi everyone, I'm Jelle from Bonsai. So maybe a bit of a harsh statement to begin with, but we have ESG, and for me, not all letters are equal. And everyone will think the E is more equal, but for me, it's the S. And I will tell you why. Because social, what you care about in your life is what you do. You want to be happy, long-term, short-term. You want to have purpose in life. You want to build a legacy. You want to leave something behind for your children. That's what you want to do. And that's also what you want in your work. You want work-life balance. You want to be happy. And of course, mental issues become more and more important, and we need to take that into account. And if we look at the 2 other letters, for me, they are support functions. They are necessary requirements to have a good social functioning society. Government speaks for itself. It's only when leadership enforces and incentivizes good social behavior that you can have a good social and working environment. And then we have the E. And it's not, I think it's unnecessary to say that there we are really lacking at the moment. We are really in a big crisis. So we all build towards having a very social, strong impact, but it's the E that we need to work on because it's a pillar that's very fastly going disrupt, and when that goes disrupt, also the social will collapse with it. Because what I think is that the E, the environmental, the climate change crisis, is not a climate crisis, but it's a social crisis, and there is not enough emphasis on the social part. When the temperatures go up, okay, it will go up 2 degrees, which is nice because then I can also wear short pants in October right now. I can still have a beer outside. It's actually nice for me. But what's really the climate change? Think about it, climate change. Drier temperature become more dry. It's hard for farmers to build their to build their crops. It's you have more flooding. You have changing weather conditions. You will have very much social impact. That will bring a bigger and bigger collapse on the entire system. And so for me, that's why the environment is so important. But we need to always talk about the social aspect. And I think too much we are talking about the climate aspect of it all. And we focus so much on climate that the private people that walk around don't understand, but why is climate change important? And even in all the previous presentations, I haven't heard a single thing about why is it important for you as an individual, why should we care about climate change? And it's because of the social impact that it has. And so if we then come to how to implement this in corporate, and then I saw the perfect example of KBC, then you have to have strong targets, tackle climate change, see which products you will introduce when you give loans to people. What we do, very short, we are in payments. Payments do 2 things. They do transactions, and they have very cool insights, data, as the woman from Microsoft said. So use that data to give people insights in how they can improve their social impact, and use those transactions to actually use that money towards climate change. So very big answer, but
that's very clear, and we've learned from a previous speaker of Mastercard that he cites your company as an example, and it's Mr. DEWAERHEIJD, and DEWAERHEIJD is the truth, so it must be true. So if I can ask Gabriel LEVIE now to build on this answer and to talk about what it means for you personally and how you try to translate this in your business, which is at a pre-seed or seed stage. And then we are going to talk about big corporates and big tech companies too, which is fascinating always, the diversity of profiles and opinions. So Gabriel, please.
Sure, thanks a lot, Jelle. I'll keep it very short. I'll start with how it matters to me very cynically. So yes, indeed, it gets hotter in the summer, which is quite nice. You don't need to go very far. Though I do not like the fact that you have to go between air-conditioned rooms and very hot outside, so you tend to sweat quite a bit. But very personally, on that cynical note, you know, you have some advantages, some disadvantages. I would think the other significant advantage as well is that it brings important questions of purpose from the start, you know? When I look at previous generations, people started a job relatively young. The question of why I'm doing this job often wasn't the one thing that mattered. It was more, you know, I'm going to do it. It's prestigious. It gives me quite security. And that's actually, in a cynical way, now the whole ESG topics gives a lot of purpose for young people who come into the job market and think, why do I want to work there? What do I want to do there? What's my part within this major puzzle? Now, that being said, on a more cynical note, I think how it matters to me personally, it gives an enormous drive. You know, when you see the world and how it's been advancing significantly, not always in the most positive way, although there are significant improvements that have happened in these topics. I would say, you know, just from the cynical part, it leads you to action. And I think that's what most people, and I hope most people are trying to use those ESG topics as drivers for action because of either being personally affected by injustice or being very empathetic towards injustices that are happening around the world. And here, so very personally, you know, I decided instead of, as you said, Bernard, instead of joining some larger corporates, I said, you know, I want to try this out in the startup route, innovating, disrupting a bit the market. And so I launched Wequity. In a nutshell, what we do is we try to use collective intelligence to hold companies accountable. We use social media and news to, in real time, stream and be aware of whether companies are actually involved into ESG controversies or positive actions, and use that to inform either the companies themselves or their investors and the asset managers. So yeah, but very curious to hear how it impacts other people.
That's very clear, thank you. You have indeed decided not to join a big corporate, but you know, maybe sometime they will buy your company for tens of hundreds of millions, and then you could claim to enter the executive board and maybe to become the CEO to transform those companies as well. So now, Nasir, you are a privileged actor in fintech with the LHoFT as a great accelerator. You've talked about the study you are doing. So on a personal, for you personally, ESG, how you feel with the concept, and how does it translate in your day-to-day work with the startups, the fintech, and with all the partners you've got at the LHoFT?
Yeah, thank you. I'm quite selfish. I want to live forever, and I need a planet to live on. It's that simple, right? If you look at it that way, I think you start caring. So I am very worried about the planet because I think life expectancy as a whole has huge potential, is growing significantly. There's much research going on in biotech around various medications and I guess science that can extend our life significantly. And I had a friend of mine who set up one of these companies in Boston at Harvard University. Their trials suggest that they can extend life already to about 120. And that's going beyond. My children have the potential to live to 150. The first person to live to 150 is already born. So yes, I do want to try to see if I can live forever, and if I want to do that, I need a planet to live on, so the world needs to be sustainable.
All right, that's very clear. Now, coming to you, Michal, you are an executive board member in a very large financial institution. Could you please elaborate on ESG from a personal perspective, and also relating to what you and your colleagues say in the executive board, and what worries you and what the opportunities are?
Okay, so from the more personal perspective as an aspiring Master Yoda, so I believe ESG is just doing the right thing, to making sure that there's a bit of more purpose just behind the numbers. And I believe the whole story is about broadening the horizon. So we used to be focused only about money, financial resource, and only for the stakeholders, or sorry, for the shareholders. And now we are broadening the perspective to take care about shareholders. And to be honest with you, what we do as Euroclear, it's predominantly starting with the S letter. So how do we actually maximize our social impact, starting with our employees, their families, the environment we work in, let's say the countries that we operate in. Then comes the E letter, as also in my CIO role. It's about green IT. So how can we reduce our carbon footprint? We have a net zero ambition, which is 2050. So how can we make it actually earlier than that? And on the governance, I believe it's how to make sure that the decisions are made in a correct way. So taking also into account so-called externalities. And then the whole data dimension kicks in. So we also have a lot of obligation being at the heart of financial markets to provide transparency in the data. So that's how I see that.
All right, thank you very much. And last but not least, Myriam, with Microsoft, and as technology is by definition a key enabler for lots of things, how could you build on what have been said up to now for the same questions? Personally, and then how do you translate that in your business activities, please?
I think it boils down to me it comes down to the quality of life. And this is also what you mentioned. We need a planet to live on. It's what you mentioned as well. And if I would be the project manager of Planet Earth, would we do things differently? Would we take different actions? And that not just on the environmental side, but also on the quality of life for people living in Europe, in Africa, and other parts of the world. I think things would look quite differently if we would have a project manager for our planet Earth. And then if I look at my role to play in that and what I think I can contribute, I work for Microsoft, a technology company that enables a lot. And I'm now for a year responsible for sustainability at Microsoft, looking at how can we improve, be a role model. Belgium and Luxembourg are a company, but of course also how can we help with our technology, our customers, to be more sustainable. And we see companies in different industries facing very, very different challenges on sustainability. Banking, finance industry has very different challenges. I heard green IT, but if you look at manufacturing companies, they face very different and other types of emissions, water management, kind of scenarios for which they need solutions. And we have been talking about those solutions already today. Another part there is the S, the societal, social part. I'm also a member of the diversity and inclusion group within Microsoft Belgium and Luxembourg, and we see that also there we have a lot of things to do. We can still improve a lot, and in our ecosystem, we have to be a role model. We have to connect the dots. That's also what I love to do, work with our partners, work with the startups that are super important drivers and come with innovative ideas. There is, for instance, Greenery, which was already mentioned today. Euroclear is also linked to them that play a front-runner role. There are also other startups like Biodiversity, Climate Camp. Those are a few of the environmental ones in our ecosystem. And connecting those dots that I feel as a big part of my role as well, making sure that we grow together and that we are on this journey together.
Thank you very much. If I may maybe continue with you and narrowing down, and more specifically, at Microsoft, what are the kind of market and possibly regulatory pressures that you face, so mainly in a nutshell, and what are the main sustainability challenge of corporates for you, corporates which are your clients by definition? So the market pressures on the one hand, and possibly also regulatory pressures influencing all this. And then I will ask the same question to Michal, maybe relating to the corporate view, but from a big financial institution perspective.
We see that it is becoming like a license to operate, progressing on sustainability. So there's a lot of action going on in the market. If you talk about pressure, there's also a bit or a lot uncertainty and kind of anxiety even. Uncertainty in the sense that regulations are there, EU taxonomy is there for a part. It is still also being kind of under construction, and a lot of companies and corporates, they don't know really what they are facing and what they are supposed to be disclosing. And is this going to lead to companies that have a green label and companies that will have a red label? I understand that that is absolutely not the intention of the EU taxonomy, but it seems to be like an anxiety or uncertainty in the markets. We also see that in Europe we have we are front runners, we have our Green Deal, the EU taxonomy, but in other parts of the world there is different regulations and different goals. And we also see that creates certain things in the market that companies are not sure anymore how to keep investing in Europe or moving certain activities away, dependent on their structures, their shareholders, stakeholders. So there's a lot that is taking place there.
All right. Michal, maybe could you build on this and elaborate with your own perspective?
So we have two challenges. So one is a bit on the mindset to explain this issue. And I was also listening to KBC, Microsoft, Mastercard. So I believe there's a lot of confusion or a lot of greenwashing. So how to create, like the true intrinsic motivation to do the right thing, because big companies tend to approach that from the compliance perspective. Yet another tick in the box that we are good as far as ESG is concerned. So I believe we can do more than that. And we need to just create this enthusiasm. And to be honest with you, when I see the new generation of people being hired, that helps a lot. The other thing is data, because it is very, very confusing. Indeed, we are even investing in some companies that would allow us to structure data more properly. Because sometimes, I don't know what is tier 3 type of emissions for me. It's actually tier 1 from Microsoft, who is our provider. So how to make sure that we don't do double counting, and how do we help each other? In a services type of company, we are not such a big emitter of CO2. As such, we are talking about 90,000 tons, and that we could squeeze or offset at the end of the day. So that's not a big challenge. But I believe how to make a good mindset so that company really wants to do that. We have this intrinsic motivation. That I would say is the predominant challenge.
No, that's very clear. Now, let's come also to Nasir, Gabriel, and Jelle. And if we narrow down also specifically relating to regulatory pressure, those are attention points, but maybe also opportunities for startups, for new projects, for people sharing this kind of new ideas and say, well, that's an opportunity. Yes, is it the case? What is it? What you observe, and to what extent?
Absolutely, it's a challenge and an opportunity for startups. Obviously, just as for large institutions, the lack of clarity around the regulatory environment and reporting requirements with new requirements coming in creates complexity in business. But on the flip side, and well, let's mention them for the 10th time, Greenamy, for example, a startup has taken that challenge on, be it that they were involved in writing the EU taxonomy at the EU EC anyway, and to be able to assist and enable financial institutions to be able to be compliant and to adhere to the rules of sustainable finance. And uncertainty, as is often the case, and challenges always present opportunities for new businesses. And I think, you know, we're going to see a lot more happening in that area with flexible design structures for various different startups that typically are much more agile in being able to adapt and deliver services than large corporate institutions. And as I mentioned in our report and the interviews we conducted with financial institutions, what was really surprising, and this to me has been a massive mindset, because you would not have heard this 5-10 years ago from a financial institutions. A large number of the institutions we talked to suggested that the fintech firms, or green fintech firms, let's call them that, have a role to play in helping them structure their strategy and their processes and operations internally, because they actually think that the startups are more likely to acquire the correct talent in that area, because startups are sexy to work for and banks are not, right? So they think that those firms have a role to play in helping them get their sustainable finance strategy and processes correct as well.
Maybe more specifically, and going to Gabriel, and knowing a bit what you are doing, I will ask the question, a question that is obvious for you. Are you familiar with the European Union taxonomy? And to what extent is this an opportunity for you?
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to build up on what Nasir has been saying during his speech first and right now. I think one of the main real reasons that startups like mine can exist is in big part because of regulatory requirements.
Exactly.
Because I love the change of mindset, but change of mindset is slow. Not that regulation is fast, but change of mindset is slow. And so when you're a startup and you identify new needs and pains that will come on the horizon, you can definitely jump, and the EU taxonomy is one of them, but the SFDR, which you mentioned, is another one. The number of CSRD for corporates is another one. So a number of regulations on the ESG perspective, and here I'm just focusing on ESG, that open up opportunities for startups like us to help either the corporate or the banks or the investors, or make the link between a variety of the players. And as you come in as a startup, you know, and you start engaging and trying to understand the problems, raising awareness, like you said, Nasir, on enabling people to understand what's coming up on ESG, how is it going to affect them, and problems. There's actually, I think the main aspect is raising awareness, so being able to tell them, look, like this is coming up, you might not be aware of, and how are you going to start engaging in the conversation of how are you actually going to solve these problems? Do you have internal solutions? Do you looking for partners? Can we find solutions together? That's where the agility of startups can really come in handy, because you can really customize and find solutions that very quickly are rolled out across internal partners. But it definitely, the regulation helps, because it forces people, and as an argument, it becomes much more stronger.
No, thank you very much. And if I may add something, what I liked in all those initiatives is that it gives all the players a common language. So you can agree or disagree. And what is ESG? And you, Jelle, you said, okay, there is the E, the S, and the G. According to what I think, maybe we should focus more on the S. Well, it's important, but for others it doesn't matter. But what matters is that we have a common language. It started with the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals, as you know. Initially, 7 or 8 years ago, people said, okay, what's going to do? Now, look, I'm sure Michal and Myriam, in the strategy of your company, you refer to the SDGs by saying, okay, there are 17, maybe we are focusing on 12 or 10, or my friend Wim Vermeer, the Chief Investment Officer at AGEAS and AG Insurance, what he says to me, well, we focus on 10 or 17 or out of 17, but in my investment activity today, I focus on 3. So the number 9, 11, and 30, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, sustainable cities, climate actions. And all the arguments are, it's too vague, we are not going to implement that. It doesn't matter, because then you have a common language and you can stimulate a discussion. So the same for the taxonomy, with all the discussions, it's a common language. The same for SFDR, how you say it, and all those things. Now, do you agree, dear panelists, that there is a lot of pressure of the market and of the regulators relating to ESG? Or do you see, no, I can manage? Yes, lots of pressure? Okay, then, when preparing this panel, Michel, you had a very interesting point that was raised by other people also. Yeah, it's important, but do we need to impose regulations so that companies will be more responsible? Or will it be more driven by employee and customers' change of mindset and come somehow automatically? And then we come to a point raised before by Myriam saying, maybe another part of the world is different, so we might face competition and so on. So as you raised the point at first, may I ask you to answer as the first one, please?
Okay, I can do that. It's a bit of loaded question, and I actually agree with Gabriel. So it's about pace. If we believe that it is a burning platform, and it is, then we need to act quickly. So the mindset and the change, like coming from intrinsic motivation, even though it's a better way to go, that would just take ages. And to be honest with you, yes, we feel that. So for example, in IT, I need to hire more than 1,500 employees over the next 5 years. And there's no chance that they would come and join me if we have this, traditional financial institution labo. So we need to be sexy, we need to be like planet aware, and we need to be true, because people know, are we there for sure? Or is that only a compliance item? But again, it's going to take too much time. So I am actually in favor of regulations, because that puts a pressure, that brings taxonomy, and that makes us acting quicker.
Okay. Myriam, maybe?
I love the intrinsic motivation, of course. But if you think about the governance and incentivizing people, if you have someone like a plant manager and he's not incentivized for his manufacturing, for his production line, to really think about sustainability as well, then I doubt that his intrinsic motivation will be sufficient. An important principle that I like to adhere to is the do not harm principle. And I think that is something that we need to bear in mind, and also keep looking at the regulations as they are intended to be. And it's not just a tick in the box, yes, we are compliant with the regulations, but it's really trying to make sure that the goals are really met as they are intended to be, and not just used as something that needs to be done. We have to see the bigger picture as well, and especially I think large corporations together with their whole ecosystem, because this is also something that we cannot do alone. We have to work together. And we have a responsibility to take there. And actually every employee and everybody has to take responsibility.
Oh, yes, please, Nasir. Yeah.
To your point as to whether this might happen naturally and whether we need rules, I think you do need rules, because, as I briefly mentioned before, when it comes to money, rich people don't give a shit. That's the blunt answer I've got for you. They care about making money. And to import qualitative assessment for doing good for the planet ultimately doesn't matter as much to them as making 8 to 10% on their fund investments on a yearly basis. That's the first point. In terms of employees, do they give a shit? I would argue that in the vast majority they don't either, because they're worried about paying their energy cost, housing bills, buying food for their table right now. Because the wealth gap is bigger than it's ever been in history, and those ultra-rich people that are continuing to make more money have made life difficult for everyone else on the planet, right? So unless you put rules and boundaries into this around this, shit isn't going to move at all. You need to make people do things and do the right things. We used to. We're the generation that has screwed up this planet more than anyone. Our parents were so much better. You know, my milk was delivered on an electric vehicle in a glass bottle in the morning. My mother washed every single nappy. She never used a disposable nappy in her life. They used paper bags in supermarkets, which they put into disposable bins. They didn't have dishwashers. They washed plates and knives and forks by hand, right? Even washing clothes was often done by hand. We have buggered everything up, but we've become a consumer society. But we've also been a little bit led down this path, even though we do have free choice, because we're constantly striving for what we don't have, because we see these people who have everything, right? And I would blame, actually going back to your S, I would say that's the biggest problem, is that we need to sort out the wealth gap on this planet and make everyone better off, and I think then we'll solve a lot of these problems more easily.
No, that's very good. Lots of comprehensive answers. So I hear, yes, maybe there might be a concern from some corporates because that could claim we can do that ourselves. We do not need the rules. But then even the corporates, you realize that that's important. Not only the E, but also the S. Just for all of us here, because we are mainly exposed with the European Union context, the logic is very clear and will stay forever. There is a logic of transparency, as you have stated before. There is an ultimate goal, which is to reorient the money to sustainable assets that are priced well. That's the issue of externalities we listened to before. There is also sometimes you hear this principle of double materiality. That's jargon, but it's important. It's for the financial of the firm's account. Sustainability is the outside in. So as a company, you want to install solar panels, for example. You strive for diversity in your teams, for the S, and for good governance. But as a company, you can also include sustainability in your core purpose. And some companies, consulting firms, they decide in IT, they decide only to hire autists, people with Asperger, and the option for them, for those employees, is to live forever in a specialized institution, living like a plant or a legume, or to be a top consultant programming in Python. That's an example of a core purpose relating to sustainability. And thanks to the transition towards the S, because that's your concern, we are speaking a lot about the E letter at the European level. The first block of regulation is the EU taxonomy, which is a classification of activities according to the E. Very good, but there is work in progress relating to the S. The second block is SFDR, the Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation for the funds. A lot on the E as well. And then reporting. So we are speaking a lot about the E. How important is the S, and should the regulators go further relating to the S, or if not, should big corporate startups or accelerator go further and push for that from a regulatory perspective or just by pushing in the market? Please, Jelle. Yes, please.
That's a super difficult one because although I said the S is the most important, it's the most important to think about because it's what incentivizes people. But let me be clear, right now the E is the most important. That's the one everyone should focus on. But what we should do is translate that to how does that make an impact on you? Like socially and what you do in everyday life, why should you become more environmentally conscious for yourself, basically, or for your environment, or for your children? Like, what's the social impact? So that's how we should tackle it. So the social is important because in everything we do, we need to translate what is this climate action doing for you as a person. And that's something, if I hear a lot of company presentations, I never hear. Like, what does this mean for you socially? The only thing you say is, we are reducing emissions by 80%. We become zero waste neutral, water, whatever. Everything like that is always based on this climate E stuff. No, you should translate it into what's the impact on the social, and then it becomes tangible for people. Okay. And then it's, how do you start incentivizing? There, I like what Nasir said. It should be rules and regulations in place to incentivize people to do all those actions. But then you also say, we do this in Europe, but if some companies say, yeah, but then I move to Asia or to other places in the world where they don't have these rules and regulations yet, and that it won't impact my business, they will leave. So there you have that chicken and egg story. Do you wait for the rules and the incentives to be there before you start investing in the environment, or do you already start and trust that in the end, benefits will come to the first movers? And there I think the answer is both ways. You should focus on what you can do and reap the benefits by yourself, for hoping that enough people will see what you are doing and your true purpose, and that you are the first mover and that you dare to really tackle this challenge, and that also the incentives and the rules will benefit you afterwards. So the social is super important, the main thing, but if we don't work on the E right now, we will also have a big social problem.
Okay. I've been asked already to ask the last question just before asking you some takeaways, but there will be the opportunity for you to build on what Jelle has just said with this question. The question is simple. Where is ESG going in the coming years? In the coming years, what will happen, and how can you turn ESG into a value driver, please? But you wanted to react, Myriam, so...
Yes, and my answer is also, I guess, but the answer to your question, because I wanted to comment on what you were saying. The human capital is what can accelerate our results on the E, on the environment part. If we can incentivize, if we can build a diverse and inclusive environment for people that work in our organizations, in our corporate organizations, startups, connecting the dots in this value chain, I'm convinced if we get that as a driver right, that the rest will come.
Thank you, Myriam.
I believe it creates an opportunity, because right now we are in a very early stage, and again, we see a lot of confusion, at least in my industry. How do we, so that would be our annual report on finance and strategy, and that would be the ESG disclosure. So I believe perhaps we are on the high side when it comes to data, and we are a bit too quantitative. So I believe the driver for me is to bring more simplicity, more automation, and more transparency to the system, so that we could actually focus on decision making, because right now we are focusing on data gathering. So I guess it's a next level, and to be honest with you, part of our business strategy, it's actually to facilitate that, because we are in between the issuers and the investors, so we have a bit of unique perspective. So our interest is actually to be the player that could help people to make the right decisions.
Thank you very much. Okay.
So to answer in one sentence, where is it going? I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to stay, and it's here to stay, and we all have to accept that and embrace it. And so it's a question of thinking, well, how in this world where these topics are a priority, how do I position myself? How do I take the best out of it? How do I myself also make the best out of it for the others and my stakeholders? And that's where it's going to go, because we're going to be surrounded by it, and we are already surrounded by it.
I think there'll be a number of things that happen in the near to mid-term. One is you will see ESG arbitrage. I think you already mentioned about companies and maybe businesses diverting attention to different jurisdictions where taxonomies may be slightly lighter. We've got evidence that that does occur. For example, it used to be a big thing in Islamic finance 10, 15 years ago, where depending on the lightness of the taxonomy on the products, people would invest in different ways. I think you'll see a disproportionate unfair impact on small businesses. These rules are built for big businesses who will take advantage of them better and faster than small business. I mean, it seems so unfair for a small business to have to comply to the extent that large companies will, with all these additional costs that will mount on them in order to be able to get access to capital, for example. You know, if you can't get a loan unless you comply with all these criteria, that's going to be horrible for small business. And I think thirdly, you know, on the human capital side, you know, I do think firms do focus on the S. I think diversity in particular is a core focus of most institutions. We campaign on it a lot, and in finance and fintech in particular, you have the worst possible combination, right? Finance men, tech men, fintech, you're buggered, right? What can you do? Shit, actually, I just realized what I said, and if you think about it, that's absolutely true, isn't it? Buggered. Yes, the firms are focusing on it. We will obviously drive forward with focusing on ESG, but it will be initially rules determined because profit seeking doesn't necessarily fit with sustainability.
All right, as far as I'm concerned, I don't know what about you, but I feel more inspired thanks to you, more connected, also more knowledgeable. Thank you very much for that. Myriam and Michal, please do continue come to my university to hire my students, that's for sure. Nasir, Gabriel, and the Yellow, grow your company, and please continue inspiring us and give investment opportunities to the investors here in the room. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you.
There is a bottle of wine for each of you waiting at the bottom of the steps. So that's good.
Thank you.
Big thanks for moderating this event. I know there's a slide for the speaker corner. So if the people up in the booth want to take care of that slide, it should be able to appear behind me. That we have the afternoon speaking corner with Margaret and SPLAWN, who was speaking for us earlier from Microsoft. So she's moving there. You can follow her to the speaker room. And there's a coffee break, 45 minutes to mingle with your peers, to talk to each other, to learn, to exchange what you found interesting, what you were missing. And if you missed anything, do speak to the organizers and myself, because we want to keep the content, of course, very close to what you were expecting to get. So have a good coffee break and see you afterwards. We'll be covering the technology track in this room.